There's so much confusion around nutrition. You know, you've got all these wars happening.
Confuses me, so I can't blame anybody.
Diet wars, but at what point do we know that this is correlated to cancer? Is there anything nutritionally that we should maybe prevent or stop eating just in case?
Everything in life is about balance.
Okay.
So from a nutritional perspective, it's important for humans physiologically to consume a nutrient-diverse diet. And what that means basically is, as omnivorous human beings adapted to the planet Earth, we need both plant and animal sources. The degree of which varies slightly between people. But again, we need both plant and animal sources to maintain our metabolism over time. Regarding things that people should, or food sources that people should avoid, in general, you want to avoid foods high in saturated fats. I think that's pretty common knowledge. Again, public health professionals would agree on that. It's not like one of the issues, as an example, is the Western diet. Here in the United States, we have a really, really big issue with obesity. Obesity is very, very strongly linked to cancers as well. I think 13 at this point. And a lot of that is diet-based. And a lot of it comes from people's overconsumption of highly palatable foods that are high in saturated fats, foods that have high amounts of added sugars. And you can consume those. We can all consume those. I know I absolutely love ice cream. I drink a root beer every once in a while. There's nothing wrong with doing that every once in a while. But the issue is that people become reliant on those foods.
Well, but like when it comes to sugar, I know that there, in our world, it may not really exist. It's like, okay, but there are some people who are definitely every single day it's ice cream. It's like a part of their diet.
Right.
And is that when it becomes problematic?
Exactly. So It's those chronic exposures to poor diet.
Okay.
Yeah, that can create, again, not only risks for all cancers, but literally diabetes, obesity, those sorts of things. And they all kind of like have these metabolic contributions between each other that are very, very tightly linked. So
I've been reading a book lately, and in this book, it's actually Dr. Peter Attia's book, and I'm very fond of him, and I love listening to him and his research.
Same.
And he mentions, because he speaks a lot about cancer, and actually in his book he's got a chapter on it. And correct me if I'm wrong, he says that we all have cancer cells, and that scares me.
Yeah. So whether or not, again, I also respect Peter very well. He's obviously very well respected in the scientific community as well. But I do think that he's kind of branching out of his field of expertise a little bit here. I will say that is not true, which is perfectly fine. We don't all have cancer. And I think we've spoken a little bit about this offline as well, is that there's a very, very strong difference between a normal cell and a cancerous cell. It's not like a virus where we're constantly fighting it off or some sort of pathogen. Cancer is typically a disease associated with those chronic changes as a cell develops over time that at some point, depending on our environment, depending on our genetics, basically cancer arises when basically things go out of whack. And that's not like something that's intrinsically involved in normal healthy cell metabolism, right? So it's not like I said, it's not like we're always fighting off cancer. We all have I can say this with confidence, is that we all have the potential for developing cancer, but it's not like we all start off with cancer unless we have strong genetic contributors, like again, those people with Lynch syndrome or P53 mutations in specific tissues, things like that.
So these P53 mutations, should we be like, where does diagnosis come into perspective? I know that we're doing that. I've heard of liquid biopsies. You can get CT scans, but does this mean that we can go and get a 23andMe test done and see what genetic risk factors we have?
Yeah, actually, I did somewhat recently. Within the past year, I got a 23andMe done.
Yeah.
Just because I wanted to see if I had any sort of genetic contributions between cancers, right? Because it's my field of study. So I was interested to see if I had certain mutations that increase someone's risks for cancers. Now, I will say that dependent even if I were to detect a mutation, doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to get the cancer. But knowing about the specific mutation, there are certain things I can do within my life to reduce risks.
That's like Alzheimer's disease.
Mhm.
They're risk factors
Right.
that we know they're there. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the same sort of thing. Every disease has those genetic contributions.
But
But knowing is going to, knowing they're there is going to give you kind of power over it. And then
or it could scare the hell out of you.
It's scary. So one thing that I really try and temper people's emotions with are that diseases in general are very complicated.
Yeah.
And just because you have a mutation doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get a cancer. Yes, while that might be scary, I think people need to come to peace with the fact that they're human beings. We're constantly adapting to errors going on within our bodies. You and I right now are having DNA errors that are being fixed as we speak within nanosecond range, even smaller than that picosecond range, that are just being repaired. People need to come into consensus that it's just very complicated, and we don't all have cancer upon this either. So it's just because it's scary doesn't mean that we shouldn't know, right? We have to be able to make actions about the things that we can control. You can't control a lot of those things. I mean, you can control what you eat, you can control the environments you're in to some extent, but that genetic contribution, you can't. So you just do what you can in your environment to help reduce your risks.
Yeah. And then, you would also say with that the best prevention is screening, because but then again, so for example, I've personally been affected with it. My auntie and my grandmother passed away of pancreatic and ovarian cancer. And it's quite scary because I saw from the time of diagnosis to death, it was a very short period of time.
Especially with pancreatic.
Yeah, and you don't pick up on it. So that's really obnoxious to me to think, wow, you don't feel anything. When you feel something, you go and get it checked. And when you get it checked, diagnosis, and then you're gone 3-4 weeks later.
So a lot of my research has been focused on ovarian cancer as well.
Oh, wow, okay.
And even pancreatic cancer I've studied for a very brief amount of time. But one of the issues with those cancers is you get symptoms, but by that time that you get symptoms from them, the cancer is already at a particular staging where there isn't all that much you can do because it's advanced beyond a particular stage that the treatment options are limited. So one of the issues in detecting ovarian and even pancreatic cancer is that they're detected way too late because of the lack of symptoms until they start causing problems.
Are there screening measures for pancreatic? The same as colorectal?
No.
See what I mean?
That's one of the issues.
Hope for the best.
It's a huge issue within the pancreatic field, but there are liquid biopsies now that can help to, I guess, assess whether or not someone has a likelihood for it.
Okay.
There's this test called GRAIL. Well, it was invented by GRAIL, but it's called the Galleri test. And so it's a liquid biopsy that detects circulating tumor DNA. And so as tumors develop, like I said, they acquire these specific issues or mutations. So there are tests like a liquid biopsy from the Galleri test that can detect some of these mutated DNA sequences that come from these early developed pancreatic cancer cells. And so if that test detects it, and you get analyzed by a professional, they have a reason to do some form of an actual biopsy on your pancreas to see if there's actually tumors there. But those are some sort of early detection methods that we're trying to develop, and they are getting better over time. But those liquid biopsies aren't always perfect for all cancers. They are preferential towards some cancers.